On her birthday, her billionaire husband and her own daughters served her divorce papers, stripping her of the mansion, the company shares, everything she'd built her life around. Her daughter sneered, calling her an irrelevant ghost while they all shared a chilling laugh. But she only met their eyes with a quiet intensity, signed without a word of protest, and walked out into the night. Years later, her name appeared on the hostile takeover documents that would shatter their empire. Redemption had come, colder and more calculated than they could imagine. There are moments when the facade of family crumbles, revealing the raw ambition and entitlement beneath, forcing you to rebuild from the ashes of betrayal. The soft glow of a single candle flickered across Patricia Miranda's face as she sat at the grand mahogany dining table, surrounded by the family she'd devoted her life to. The crystal chandelier overhead cast elegant shadows across the room, and the air carried the subtle aroma of her signature lavender candles, chosen to soothe the stresses of their high society world. She'd spent the day orchestrating every detail of this birthday dinner, her 50th, preparing Edmund's preferred aged steak, Melane's decadent truffle risotto, and Teresa's favorite artisanal salad, with ingredients sourced from that exclusive market across town. Her hands bore the faint marks of her efforts, a small cut from chopping herbs, the subtle ache from hours of meticulous preparation. These quiet sacrifices had always felt like the essence of her love, woven into the fabric of their lives. She'd even rearranged her schedule to polish Edmund's speech for an upcoming gala, ensuring his image as the untouchable billionaire remained flawless, while shielding Melaine and Teresa from the cutthroat realities of their father's empire. "Make a wish, Mom," Melaine said with a practiced smile, her voice laced with the same polished arrogance as her father's. "Before we continue with the story, be sure to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Oh, and drop a comment below letting us know where you're watching from. We love seeing that." The single candle guttered as Patricia blew it out. No one clapped. The lavender smoke curled upward like a question no one intended to answer. Edmund rose first, the chair legs whispering over marble. Melaine and Teresa stood in perfect unison behind him, sleek black dresses catching the chandelier's light like oil on water. Their smiles were identical, small, satisfied, rehearsed. "Happy 50th, darling," Edmund said, voice warm enough to fool anyone who hadn't slept beside him for 28 years. He placed the ivory envelope in front of her plate, right where the chocolate tart should have been. "Your actual gift." She knew the weight before the seal broke. Thick, expensive paper that smelled faintly of the lawyer's cologne. Absolute divorce. Immediate forfeiture of all marital assets, shares, trusts, residences, a non-compete clause drafted to bury her forever. The final page required only her signature and the date. Melaine leaned in. Diamond studs flashing. "We're rebranding, Mother. You're off-brand now." Teresa's laugh followed, light and crystalline, the same laugh that once begged for bedtime stories. Edmund watched with the mild curiosity he reserved for hostile takeovers. "Sign, Patricia. The staff has already packed what you're allowed to keep." Her pen moved across the line without hesitation. Ink steady, wrist calm. No tears, no pleas. Only the soft scratch of Mont Blanc on cotton paper. When it was done, she stood. The chair made no sound. She had always been quiet. She slipped into the camel coat hanging by the door, the one she'd worn the night Edmund first called her brilliant, and lifted the scarred leather briefcase from the console, the one she'd carried out of graduate school, the one they'd mocked as shabby for years. Edmund lifted an eyebrow. "Going somewhere? Somewhere else?" she said. Teresa rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic. Security will escort you." Patricia paused at the threshold, briefcase in one hand, coat buttoned to the throat. The three of them stood framed by the dining room's golden light, a perfect portrait of triumph. She met their eyes, Edmund's cool blue, Melaine's practiced green, Teresa's bright, careless hazel, and offered the smallest curve of a smile. Then the door closed behind her, soft as a vault, and the night swallowed the irrelevant ghost whole. The apartment smelled of fresh paint and someone else's curry. One room, cracked parquet. A window that stuck. Patricia set the briefcase on the folding table that passed for a desk, and clicked the brass latches. They opened with the same reluctant sigh they'd given the night she defended her thesis. Inside, Yellow legal pads curled at the edges, floppy disks labeled in her own careful hand, a single USB drive wrapped in faded silk. The Miranda algorithms, born in grad school sleeplessness, refined in the quiet hours after the girls were asleep and Edmund was at yet another gala. She had never let the lawyers near them. They were registered only in her maiden name, buried under layers of shell entities even Edmund's auditors never found. She plugged the drive into the second-hand laptop, lines of code scrolled like old friends. Predictive models that had once been theoretical toys now looked almost gentle compared to the monsters she could birth with 2 years of rage. Her fingers hovered, then dialed a number she still knew by heart. A pause, then a voice rough with sleep and Tokyo markets. "Miranda? Christ, people think you're dead." "They will," she said, voice soft, precise. "But first I need a seed desk, dark fiber, and absolute silence. 10 million to start. I'll return it in 90 days or I disappear forever." Another pause. She could almost hear him calculating. "You still have the black box quant no one could reverse engineer?" "I have 20 years of improvements." A low whistle. "Send the term sheet. Welcome back to the war, Pat." She hung up, closed the lid of the briefcase, and looked around the bare room. The overhead bulb flickered once, then steadied. The ghost had found her weapon. 2 years collapsed into a rhythm of screens and silence. The first trade executed at 3:17 a.m. from a folding chair returned the 10 to million seed in 47 days. She paid the debt, wired the profit into a Cayman entity, and never spoke the investor's name again. Months blurred. Takeout containers stacked like bricks. 3 monitors glowing in the dark, the Miranda algos learning, mutating, drinking data the way fire drinks oxygen. She slept in 90-minute bursts, hair twisted back with a pencil, eyes ringed violet. Every basis point earned was another brick, in a wall no one could see rising. She moved once, then twice, always upward, always quieter. A serviced flat in London for the European close. A glass box in Singapore when Asia bled. No name on the doorbell, no photos, no trace. Ascendant Global appeared on no exchange, filed in no jurisdiction anyone could pronounce. It simply began to win. Shorting overvalued retail darlings, longing forgotten miners before the world noticed the supply crunch, carving profits with the calm precision of a surgeon who no longer feels pain. Regulators whispered about a ghost fund. Competitors woke to shredded positions and no fingerprints. Bloomberg ran a single paragraph. Ascendant Global, CEO, undisclosed, posts, 3rd consecutive year of returns north of 400%. The journalist who tried to dig deeper received an encrypted email containing his own browser history and nothing else. He killed the story. Patricia watched the balances climb past 9 figures, then 10, then 11, the numbers serene and weightless. She bought tailored suits in charcoal and midnight, cut her hair to a severe blade, let the softness fall away like dead leaves. At night she sometimes stood at whatever window faced whatever city, and felt the old ache try to surface. Melane's laugh, Teresa's eye roll, Edmund's mild, murderous smile, then crushed it beneath the next line of code. The ghost had learned to feed on silence. And Ascendant Global, invisible, merciless, and hers alone, kept rising. 18 months after the birthday that never happened, the car penthouse still glittered, but the shine had begun to flake. Edmund stood on the terrace, phone to his ear, voice rising above the traffic 30 floors below. "Of course the valuation holds. We're Car Group." The analyst on the other end murmured something about negative cash flow and covenant breaches. Edmund ended the call with a curse and hurled the phone into a potted olive tree. Inside, Melaine scrolled through her feed, lips pursed. A sponsored yacht party in Mykonos had only pulled 2 million impressions. "These influencers are greedy," she complained, charging another $250,000 to the corporate card for a handbag shaped like a life raft. Teresa lay on the dove-gray sofa, half watching a reality show about people richer than she now was, ordering vintage champagne because the sommelier had once slighted her at Art Basel. The quarterly board package arrived by courier. Edmund signed for it himself. The usual assistant had been let go to trim overhead. The numbers inside were ugly. Private jet leases bleeding 8 figures, a chain of luxury hotels half empty, since the algorithm-driven booking engines mysteriously rerouted guests elsewhere. 3 SPACs that had collapsed into penny stock graves. Worst was the revolver drawn to the limit, interest ticking like a bomb. Edmund poured a 1,959 Macallan and told himself it was temporary. Genius always looked like arrogance right before triumph. Melaine wandered in, phone aloft. "Daddy, the jet needs new interiors. The old ones photograph beige." Teresa followed, pouting. "And Street Barth's is dead this year unless we charter the big one." Edmund forced the old smile. "Of course, princesses." That night the bank sent the first polite letter requesting additional collateral. He filed it under miscellaneous and opened another bottle. In the mirrored hallway the 3 of them passed one another without speaking. Reflections fracturing into smaller, sharper pieces. Somewhere far above them, unseen, Ascendant Global watched the revolver balance climb and waited with the patience of winter. The first short position opened at 4:12 GMT, silent as snowfall. 10 million shares borrowed, sold into the pre-market darkness. By London Open, another 20. Patricia watched the order book from a bare room in Zurich. Coffee cooling untouched. The Miranda algos whispering probabilities in soft green rows. Car Group's ticker blinked. Dipped. Steadied. Edmund noticed nothing. He was in the Gulf Stream en route to Davos, practicing the smirk that once closed billion-dollar rounds. In Manhattan, Melaine live-streamed from a rooftop, spinning in a couture coat. People saying car is in trouble? Darling, we practically print money. Teresa, beside her, laughed into the lens. Shorts are just jealous peasants. Let them lose their shirts. The next day, Ascendant doubled the position. Options followed. Deep out of the money puts. Cheap as rumors, the stock sagged again, then caught on some hedge fund bargain hunters. Patricia allowed the bounce, harvested the premium, and shorted harder on the rip. Edmund landed, skimmed the headlines, snorted. Noise. Some vulture smelling blood that isn't there. He told the CFO to buy back a symbolic 1,000,000 shares at market. Proof of confidence. The purchase lit up the tape like a flare. Ascendant greeted it with another 40 million borrowed and sold. By week's end the stock had fallen 12% on volume no one could trace. Analysts blamed macro. Reporters asked questions. Edmund scheduled a CNBC hit to call the shorts cowardly amateurs who never built anything real. Patricia closed the terminal, stood at the window, and watched snow erase footprints on the empty street below. The algos had calculated Edmund's exact breaking strain years ago. She had simply waited for the world to deliver the pressure. In the car penthouse, Melaine refreshed her feed and saw number Cara crash trending. She rolled her eyes so hard the lash glue cracked. Somewhere in the dark, the ghost tightened the noose one measured turn at a time. The trap closed on a Tuesday no one would ever forget. At 9:31 a.m. Eastern, a commodities exchange in Singapore flashed an order so large it froze the pipes for 7 seconds. Ascendant Global dumping every car-linked derivative it had accumulated in silence. Puts detonated, swaps inverted, borrowed shares flooded back like water through a broken dam. By 9:42 the stock was down 43%, and the circuit breakers tripped for the first time in Car Group history. Phones melted in the executive suite. Edmund stood at the window watching the ticker bleed red across Times Square, knuckles white on the glass. The revolver was maxed, the margin desk screaming, covenants shattered. The lead bank delivered the ultimatum by noon. Post 50 million in cash by close of business tomorrow, or we liquidate everything. Edmund locked the door, poured a triple measure with shaking hands, and opened the burner phone he swore he would never need. One number, memorized from a desperate night in 2008. A voice answered on the second ring, calm, genderless, lightly distorted. "I hear you require rescue," it said. Edmund swallowed pride and scotch in the same gulp. 200 million bridge, convertible at a premium. You'll own 30%, but I stay in control. A soft laugh, almost kind. We prefer 100%, hostile terms, but the building keeps the lights on, and the family keeps employment. Edmund closed his eyes. Outside, the ticker now read minus 71%, and falling. Somewhere in the static he thought he heard lavender. Send the documents. he rasped. The line went dead. An encrypted email arrived 30 seconds later, signature block blank except for the Ascendant Global crest. No name, no mercy. Edmund stared at the screen until the letters blurred, then pressed print. The ghost had waited long enough. The documents arrived at 3:14 a.m., delivered by a courier who refused to give his name, and vanished before the elevator doors closed. Edmund sat alone in the boardroom that had once terrified competitors, the city glittering coldly beyond the glass. The stack was thick, bound in black vellum, the Ascendant Global crest embossed in matte silver. No cover letter, no salutation, only a single post-it, signed by Dawn or the bank sees everything it open. He read until the words crawled. 100% of shares for $1, and other good and valuable consideration. Immediate removal of the board. All employees, specifically Edmund Carr, Melaine Carr, Teresa Carr, retained at entry-level salaries, reporting directly to the new CEO. Termination only for cause. Cause defined at the new CEO's sole discretion. A non-compete that spanned the rest of their natural lives. Edmund laughed once. A cracked sound that echoed off the empty table. He reached for the crystal decanter, found it dry, and laughed again. He pictured the headlines. Billionaire beggar. Carr dynasty dissolved. He pictured Melaine's face when the credit card stopped. Teresa discovering that private jets had owners who expected payment. At 5:47 a.m., the sky over the Hudson turned the color of old bruises. Edmund opened the last page. A single signature line waited beneath the words. I accept these terms in full, and without reservation. His hand did not shake. Pride had already been cremated, only ash remained. The Mont Blanc, the same pen Patricia once used, scratched across the paper like a dying insect. Edmund Carr, former chairman and CEO, he pressed the intercom. Security. Let the courier back up. Tell him it's done. Then he laid his head on the cold table and waited for morning. For the new owner. For whatever came after surrender. The ghost had her house. The boardroom doors opened at 9 sharp. No knock. No announcement. Patricia stepped through in charcoal, cashmere, and silence. Heels silent on the marble. The same severe blade of hair. The same winter coat posture. But the softness had been burned away. She carried nothing except a slim folder and the decades-old briefcase, now polished to a mirror. Edmund looked up first, mouth half open on whatever lie he had prepared. Melaine's phone slipped from her manicured fingers and clattered like a gunshot. Teresa made a small animal sound. Patricia set the briefcase on the table exactly where the divorce papers had once lain. Click, click. The latches sounded like handcuffs. Good morning, she said, voice low, precise. The same tone that once coaxed bedtime stories now edged with steel. I believe introductions are in order. Edmund found his voice first, cracked and thin. This is impossible. Impossible is a word for people who never learned to code. She opened the folder, slid 3 new contracts across the table. Entry level. No bonuses, direct reporting line to her. I am the new owner of Carr Group, effective 37 minutes ago. Your former company is now a wholly owned subsidiary of Ascendant Global, and I am its CEO. Melaine tried to stand. Her knees betrayed her. Mother, that title was forfeited the night you laughed while I signed away my life. Patricia's gaze moved across them like frost. From this moment, you have jobs. Congratulations, Edmund. You'll be assisting in compliance. Melaine, junior brand coordinator. Teresa, administrative support. Salaries are in the contracts. Benefits begin after 90 days of satisfactory performance. Teresa whimpered. You can't. I already have. She placed her palms on the table and leaned forward, the chandelier catching the cold light in her eyes. I didn't come back to ruin you, she said quietly. I came back to employ you. The ghost is now in charge, and the house has new rules. Silence fell, absolute and terrified. Patricia straightened, turned toward the door, then paused. Meeting adjourned. Be at your desks by 10. She walked out the way she had entered, leaving only the faint scent of lavender and the echo of absolute power. 3 months later, the executive floor still smelled faintly of fear. Patricia stood at the head of the same table, now stripped of its crystal decanter and its arrogance. Edmund, Melaine, and Teresa sat in the visitor chairs, no longer reserved seating, wearing the company's new charcoal uniforms without monograms. Their nameplates read, Compliance Associate, Brand Coordinator 2, Administrative Specialist, nothing more. Patricia closed the quarterly report with a soft snap. Revenue up 39%. She said, debt refinanced at half the rate. Congratulations. The company you nearly killed is now profitable because people who actually work are running it. Edmund stared at the table. His tie was slightly crooked, for the first time in 40 years. Melaine's manicure had grown out. Her nails were short, sensible. Teresa's eyes were red from yesterday's 12-hour shift reconciling vendor invoices. I promised you employment, Patricia continued, voice calm as winter water. I never promised comfort. You will stay in these roles, or roles like them, until you demonstrate the competence you once believed was inherited rather than earned. She walked the length of the table, stopping behind each chair in turn. Edmund, your first review is in 90 days. Miss another compliance deadline and you'll be in the mailroom. Melaine, the spring campaign you mocked as peasant work outperformed every influencer spend of the last 5 years. Good, do it again. Teresa, accuracy on expense reports is now 100%. Keep it there. None of them spoke. They had learned silence the way other people learn languages. Patricia returned to the head of the table. My legacy will not be the empire you squandered. It will be the proof that worth is built, not born to. You may earn your way back, one spreadsheet, one corrected error, one honest day at a time. Or you may remain exactly where you are. The choice is yours alone. She gathered her papers, dismissed. They rose as one, awkward, uncertain, and filed out past the woman they had once called irrelevant. Patricia watched the door close, then allowed herself the smallest exhale. The ghost had built a house of mirrors, and redemption, like everything else, would now be paid for in full. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.